Good morning and happy day to you. Have you ever felt like going through this world and going through the human experience that you just find you don't know what to do about certain situations? You feel funny, you're not feeling yourself, you have experienced trauma and some and had some experiences that were not favorable for you. But you are willing to turn that trauma into triumph and those problems into power. Well, today that's what we are doing. We are talking about total transformation. And I'm bringing up a guy who has impacted my life and didn't even know, but he has impacted my life in a major way in terms of my transformation. And so this is going to be a good day for us to talk about how we can transform our lives. What steps are there and what people are there? People out there that can help us through this human experience. And so, thank you and welcome to the show. Good morning. Good morning. Happy day to you and welcome to the Fear to Freedom Project. I am Dr. Deb and I am so excited today because I have an amazing guest that I'm getting ready to bring up. And he's going to be talking about his amazing transformation. I don't want to wait any further. Let's bring up my brother, Anthony Kelley. I'm bringing Anthony Kelley to the stage. Hey, brother. I'm, man, I'm so glad to see you. Where are you? Where are you
I'm
in the
in
world?
Taiwan right now. We hanging out here in Taiwan, building stuff and playing basketball, staying healthy, trying to be happy. You know what I mean? How you doing? Where are you at right now?
I'm in Charlotte, and we met in Panama, right?
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Man, I just want to I want to read your bio. Everybody has to know what I know about you. So I'm going
Mhm.
to just read this bio from the turbulent streets of Pasadena, California. Anthony Kelley, my brother, embarked on a transformative journey that saw him evolve from a promising football athlete into a beacon of inspiration, education, and total empowerment. His early years were marked by a potent blend of chaos and violence, a backdrop against which Anthony's spirit of resilience and determination began to take shape. While his athletic prowess led the university's football team to a Rose Bowl championship in 2000, it was Anthony's academic journey that truly defined his path. He not only earned a bachelor's of arts in science, but also pursued a master's in education, leadership, and policy studies. His passion for service has transcended borders, taking him to countries like South Africa, Nepal, and Egypt, where he immersed himself in community service, working with local nonprofits and educational institutions. Anthony Kelley, as I know him, AK, is not just a professional with a rich history of service and leadership. He is a living testament to the transformative power of perseverance and self belief. I love this. He's helping people to unlock their true potential, to find the tools and inspiration to revive, transform, and thrive in every facet of their lives. And I am so happy to read that bio. Yes. Let me put
Look,
you
you
up
sound.
with my brother
I love
AK.
how I sound. I think how I sound.
Yes, you're out there serving humanity in such an expansive way. And I'm telling you, because I can say this because of what you have done for my life. So I'm going to tell everybody how we met and I am sharing with you how impactful and I maybe never got a chance to let you know this, but when we met you and your beautiful wife, my sister in Panama, you taught us how to breathe. You guys came to our condo. We even did it out on the beach with our other friends. We followed you guys to some other places that you did yoga, and you really taught me how to breathe. I just want to say I am so grateful for that, because I had not been practicing that at all. And I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of stuff that I still, working through in my life. And when I met you, it was at a time where I was pretty vulnerable. Even though life looked good, I was still vulnerable inside. And you really taught me how to breathe and to sit still. And I am so just humbly grateful to you for that. You and your wife teaching me how to sit in a posture, even considering it. Like, we sat quiet in meditation. I think the first time you were like 25 minutes or something, or 30 minutes. And I thought to myself, like, how can I sit that long? So I just want to say I love you and thank you. I love you and Kim. I thank you so much for what you have done for my life. It's amazing. So I
Well,
want to
you are
get in.
absolutely welcome, and we love and thankful I've had a chance to cross paths with you and your husband, and having a chance to be able to share these tools. And that's what it really is. It's been for us, is as we've learned these principles and practices that are really general, neutral tools that everybody has access to, and really having a chance to apply that to our life, and then coming across other folks that are willing to accept and even try that experience. So I appreciate you being willing to receive that, because outside of us trying to make a living and sharing this work, these are things that I'm always willing to offer openly, because that's how it came to me. So you're
Yeah.
very welcome.
Oh, good, good, good. So why is it important? Like, where did you learn meditation and yoga? How did that start? How did that come
Um,
about for you?
well, a big part of like me learning how to utilize these tools became really kind of a life-changing experience, because it came during a very rough time in my life, kind of post-athletic, kind of going into my kind of professional work experience when I was in college, because at the time, playing as a Division I athlete at the University of Washington, winning a Rose Bowl, having a chance to go to the NFL, working out for the Olympics, doing all these kind of real high level athletic things. I had a lot of big kind of ideas or questions that kind of really hit me, impacted me, both physically and spiritually. And so just to kind of sum things up, these were tools that were later in my life introduced to me through Kimberly. Actually, she kind of started that. My wife now, because I was married previously, and Kimberly introduced these to me as kind of a resort where I was like at a really low or broken part of myself emotionally, and just really didn't know what to do. And I was in a position where my attitude was like, I'm really looking for these resources to better help me manage this stress and these internal conflicts I was having. So that's where the beginning process came, in terms of the introduction.
Yes, yes, I totally, man, I really felt you when we met. You're so deep, and you're such an empath, and you feel very deeply, and I felt you so much. And I remember you saying, after learning I was a social worker, you were like, "Man, I'm probably your case study." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"What?"
yeah.
And then you started to share, some of your experience. So I can totally, it resonates with me when you say those internal conflicts were going on, and just a lot of, I needed tools. I really needed tools to feel better. So what has that practice done for you today, though? What has,
Well, now it's been a very elaborate experience adopting these particular tools, because now that the way I live my life, and the way that I've adopted this notion of self-care and like deep self-love for myself, in terms of how I've learned to shift from a certain societal framework to really developing my own particular framework that really highlights how I can be my best self. The breathing, the yoga, and the meditation have just become intricate parts of me continuing to sustain that practice, rejuvenate myself in that practice, and then also help me think about the next steps in my practice. And so it's been this constant evolutionary practice. And what happens is, for anybody, because the thing about the practice that's really great is that outside of talking about the spiritual inclinations of what this work does for you, you can totally put this on a scientific level and see the impact of how it is a positive thing in your life. And that's what's really cool about this tool, is that I don't have to talk to you anything about what this will do for you spiritually, and just talk about the scientific fact that when you breathe, it scientifically helps push oxygen and blood through your body, which inevitably helps with, less disease, less injuries, less other. And then also when it comes into emotionally, it helps really not really remove the emotional experiences that you have, but it helps it become more manageable and lessens the overall time. So that's what's been a process for me of constantly evolving and developing that. So when I had a chance to meet you, and when you were sharing with me, really it was a blessing both ways, because as a teacher and always trying to keep myself, in a position to learn, you're willing to share, your vulnerabilities and your gaps that you were experiencing. And then by you being vulnerable and that present in that experience and allowing me to share what I've learned, both us being vulnerable with each other allowed us to have a real genuine exchange. Me thinking, or you thinking about how can I address this, and me saying, here's what I tried. And then when you had a chance to do it, you had your own experience, and now here we are now with you being able to share what this is changed, transformed for you. You know what I mean? Because everyone has their own uniqueness in this work, but what's important or incentive is how are you willing to deal with the inconveniences of finding out how to love yourself at its best capacity,
I love that. How to love yourself at the best capacity. I mean, you know, I talk about this amongst my peers, and we talk about the fact that we weren't exhibiting self-love in a lot of ways. I mean, I can honestly say that I know what self-love is now. I did not when I met you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really did not. And that's just being truthful. I have been going through this world kind of existing, I thought, in some sort of way, but not in a way that I was aware or conscious. I feel more aware of my body, how it functions, how the
Mm-hmm.
energy moves, the fact that we are energy. And I've
Mm-hmm.
just become more aware of all of that. It really, really helps in my journey. So I wanted to talk about you. You have a documentary, and I watched it. It was just very touching to me. What made you create that documentary? It's called A Journey Through Conflict and Identity. What started?
Uh, Well, as I mentioned before, coming from, high school as kind of like a star athlete, and then coming into the University of Washington as a Division I scholarship athlete, top level recruit across the United States, you know, that's really the only lens I kind of knew, because, with me growing up as a young child, I never really thought about education as a resource. It was more so athletics as this, great, distraction, because I had so many things I was going through, and traumas and violence and things that I was surrounded by. Athletics became this great, distraction from the tragedies I was experiencing. And so, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I lost track of my ADD kicking right now. What was the question again?
No, it's okay. I just wanted to know, what made you do that documentary. I mean,
Oh,
you
sorry,
had
yeah.
to, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so from growing up in those experiences, as I was kind of placed, and it was interesting because going to college and being in this limelight and seeing, you know, the position of power that I maintained with people as an influencer, as just an athlete. Wasn't my academic prowess. Wasn't my executive as a professional prowess. Just as a gifted athlete on the field, and how much power and privilege I was given. It was just very interesting for me, growing up through high school and seeing how my friends took advantage of that power. Me as a kid, especially with being, the way I looked, I got attention from women. So, athletics as a way to distract myself from what was going on at home. And then women became kind of this safe haven in these two places I could go to be both myself, both on the football field to express myself physically and not get in trouble and go to jail because of the violence, but with women and being able to express myself, and be vulnerable. And that was fortunately a good space where women at one point became a very integral part in framing my whole idea of like intimacy. And so when the documentary came, and as I was becoming famous amongst peers and seeing my influence in the community, when I was at the university, being on TV and seeing that going to the NFL, they give you so much tremendous influence and power and position. And when I had this real impactful shift in my life when I went to South Africa, that was a real shift of thinking about what it meant to be in this position of power and privilege. I lost a friend that died because of football. He sustained an injury. And then also too, I had kind of this real pinnacle moment with Kimberly when I cheated on her. And so like there's these three big kind of overarching things that really gut checked me. And I wanted to use the documentary as a kind of as a medium to capture my practice and how I try to be accountable to my actions. That's really kind of how I wanted to use it, because I was always placed in the limelight in TV and in front of people as this model. And so as I started rising so fast, even as an executive, when I was working as a professor in university, thinking about tenure facultyship or becoming a president of a university. And when I started realizing that, as I started keeping myself accountable and doing this work and trying to really do the right thing, nobody was really trying to be there with me. You know what I mean? And so when I'm in the room and I feel like I'm the only like the smartest person in the room, there's no one there to challenge me, I know there's a problem. And for me, I wanted to be as transparent and as honest as possible, because the notion right now in the world is you did this to me, you're wrong, and then pointing the finger. Nobody's taking accountability on how we've all contributed to the chaos. And so before I started sharing notions of what I feel people need to be doing or how this needs to shift, I wanted to model, how did I deal with my own trauma? How did I deal with my own shortcomings? How did I deal with the positive and negative spaces I impacted? And how did I take accountability for those actions? And what tools did I use to help me work through that and deal with the inconveniences of understanding that? Investigating the ego, investigating my personal narrative, my religious and sexual and all these different belief systems, and challenging them to the core, and using these tools as management tools that help me go through those inconvenient conversations. And to the point where, now when people work with me, it's watch the documentary first so you know what you're getting involved in. Because the result of it is that I found some mechanisms that help me be my best self. And now my goal is to build an institutional framework and a practice that continues to help me perpetuate that practice. Because one of the main reasons I didn't go to the NFL or pursue, a professional career in athletics after having this kind of exposure to this type of idea is that I didn't believe I would have the support to help me continue to pursue that, because in those positions of power, it's so easy and it's so convenient to not have to give a shit, And so for me, it was too important for me to want to be better in those spaces. So I chose not to go that route and wanted to continue to educate myself in these other ways.
Good for you. Good for you. I'm glad you had a gut check. It's amazing how the universe will help us all get to a gut check. And you were very transparent. And I think that's facing your own accountability is what you said that resonates with me. We are so quick to blame. I was blaming a lot. While I was in Panama, I discovered and learned through my spiritual practices that everything was coming back to me. It was me. I didn't have anything, and that's how we all should be, right? Everybody has.
That's the ego, and the ego is a hard one, because the way I frame the ego in the most neutral terms is that the ego, the way I define it, is your collective knowledge base.
Yes.
So I use the example as a toothbrush. I brush my teeth in the morning because we have these three elements I talked about. As an individual, I think about me having stinky breath. So here's a resource that I can use so I don't stink. But I also have a community. I have people in my life that also brush their teeth, and they use this mechanism, and they have modeled to me why it's important for me to better brush my teeth and keep my mouth fresh. But not only that, I have an institutional framework. We have dentists, we have schools, we got all types of resources that go into that. So when you think about what you just talked about, self-care, modeling behavior, and that's all a practice. So when you start thinking about your personal narrative and you start tracking, that's the thing about the meditation when we first met you. a lot of people don't understand meditating and being woke about your emotional disposition is a practice. And you have to think about everything. And that's what's most fatiguing is like, you got to think about the food. You got to think about who you're surrounding yourself around. You got to
Yes.
think about what's coming to your mind, what your environment is. All those things
All
matter.
the
And
time too.
all the
On the
time. That's
regular.
why I've become much more when I started thinking about how I was able to reconcile with the dysfunction between me and my father, me and my mom, friends, mentors. I became so much more compassionate for others
Yeah.
because the whole practice, when I was internalized looking at my own self, I had to become more compassionate to myself.
Yes,
And so, and
self-compassion.
when you
Yes.
realize, when you practice compassion for yourself, is learning to love yourself regardless, with nothing in exchange. I just love you no matter what. And now, so when you think about that notion and you come across that within yourself, what becomes difficult is when you go back into this capitalistic framework or this type of system that is rooted in I give you, you give me in return. It's not I give, or it's not I'm going to sit with you while you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable,
Yes,
or I'm not going to
that's
sit
the
with you.
matrix. That's the matrix.
Yeah, and so that's when you become aware. So that's for me now thinking about, okay, now
Mm.
that I've understood the tools in which can help me navigate this space now. It's like I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix. Now I'm going back in there and I can tell bullets to stop, so I can tell the agents to chill.
Yes.
And when I come across people like you, I have space now to ground them for you to feel safe enough to be your best self. So that's where I feel like my purpose is leading down, is like, how do I provide tools and experiences to ground space for people to be their best selves? And so
I'm
that's
so
when
thankful
I
for that.
when I think about my courses and the
Mhm.
website and the services that I'm cultivating now and getting ready to share. That's the main thing, because my position is mainly as a male, mixed race, athletic, 6'3" and a half. Oh, I've experienced so many levels of positions of power. And
Yeah.
now, with me trying to relinquish those things and really kind of readjust how I've been using these privileges, it's been constantly coming back to me as, like, for my wife. People think with my work, it's been because I've gone to seminars. No, it's been literally dealing with my gaps and my issues between the people that I love deeply in my life.
Mhm.
And all those courses that I've translated to academic or life coaching things has been a result of me taking accountability for all those things in my life. And
Mm.
so to have a chance to share those things and those tools is a blessing, but it's also still scary because you're still practicing the notions of vulnerability. So thinking about boundaries, capacity, so it's always a constant
I was
negotiation.
gonna
So
ask you about that. So, of course, this is the Fear to Freedom Project. So I was gonna talk about the fears. I know that you have had to have some
yeah.
fear how did you face them? Do you talk about any fears that you had along the way, any negative self-talk, and how did you overcome those feelings of fear and unworthiness and all of those? How did you face that?
I'm still facing it now. It never goes away. I
Mm.
believe the things that you choose to face emotionally that are specific to you, and the principles may be the same for everybody. Like, everybody has fear, everybody has happiness, sadness, those things, but it looks different for each individual. And so for me, I every time, like right now, I'm getting ready to launch my business, the website, there's courses. First thing comes in, is it going to be successful? Is it going to be this or that? For me, is that every time a fear comes to me, or something that is like, moving me, I have to ask myself why. And that's when I start going to those resources. When I'm meditating, I'm sitting still and I observe. And while you're meditating, and as you're observing, what happens is whatever frequency is coming to you, whether it be fear or sadness or happiness, that will resonate in your body. And what's important is, as you're using the deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose, and as you're focusing on the top part of your lip, the sensation here to narrow your thinking process. And what will happen is you'll have this thought that will keep arising in your mind. And the goal is that if it's fear-based, you'll feel it because you'll say, like, I'm worried, and you'll see how your mind takes you through the process. But what's important is that you allow yourself to observe the process. That's why it's so important for you to, the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is to breathe, clear your nostrils out and everything, because that's the filter that receives the world.
Mm.
And so when I get up and I know that I have an insecurity or a fear that's coming my way, what happens, that fear is not going away. But what happens is, when I breathe I inhale, exhale. I've done my yoga. I've prepared my body to be able to sit. My mind is right. I'm giving myself the type of food that works within my body. So now when I'm thinking about what's going on, I've settled myself and prepared myself to be so still where I can go to the root of wherever that fear is. And now I have a choice. Am I going to allow the choice of failing in this project be a reason why I don't try?
Right.
And my intuition will say, and that's when your intuition voice starts growing. It's either yes or no. It's not going to be because your spirit doesn't know that.
Right.
It's just going to be, but you have to clear that cloud out of the way through your physical, because as above, so below. What you do in the physical world is planted in your spiritual world. What you do in the planting your spiritual self is manifested in the physical world. And
Yeah.
so how you develop your mechanism of negotiating that space between the spirit and the physical is unique to everyone. And so when I introduced it to you, look at the physical manifestation now of your talk show now. You know what I mean? That's the result of you. And it looks nothing like the journey through conflict and identity, which is based off of the same thing.
Right.
You get what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's the incentive. So when I do work with folks and meet grounding space, the incentive for them being vulnerable is that no matter what, whether you're a business, a client as a life coach, or if I'm teaching you or this, whatever it is, regardless, whatever we come up with is going to be unique.
Yes.
Inherently.
Yes.
But it's dependent on you willing to be in that inconvenient space. And my gift is being able to sit with you in that.
Yes,
Give you the
yes. I
tools.
love that. I really love that. That is to be able to sit with someone. I say that we are here to walk each other home. That is just it. We're
Agreed.
not here alone. We're not here for ourselves. We should really just, face that ego thing, because I had to. And we're here walking each other home. And when you're talking about grounding space and holding it for someone to support them through that, that's what I see. That's what I'm doing. It's what I love. It's what I love. I would totally do it for free. So
Yeah.
I enjoy, I enjoy it. I'm so glad that we can collaborate too. So your commitment to service has taken you like around the world in different countries. And so is there a memorable moment that you can share with us that you have found like out in any of those countries? Like what is the most memorable moment that you have done in service?
I think the one was probably the most impactful was when my very first trip to South Africa. This was and the interesting part is because basically we went to the Rose Bowl in 2001 and like played the Rose Bowl, and I was back in Pasadena, my hometown. Played, won the Rose Bowl, played against Drew Brees, had a great game. On TV, talking about the trophy. Then 5 days later, I went on a Mary Gate scholarship that I received at the University of Washington on a leadership scholarship. I went to South Africa to study reconciliation, identity, conflict in the context of pre and post apartheid when I was in South Africa. And that was probably one of the most impactful experience I had that really kind of forced me to really think about what I was doing with my opportunity as a person in this particular institution. Because I remember we had to do work in the community. I was working in this local community. It was Gugulethu. Outside, as a local township outside of Cape Town. And this township, working with another organization called the Amy Bill Foundation, which was founded off of a young woman that was murdered in the streets of Gugulethu during during apartheid, where she was actually there to help educate the population on government policy when the apartheid government fell, but got caught up with the violence and was murdered. And in that example, the family went to actually visit the murder of the daughter, and from that they reconciled and forgave each other and founded this foundation. So the whole premise of the organization was rooted off of deep forgiveness and violence, and how do we learn to reconcile these things and work together. So that was kind of my introduction to this notion of conflict, identity, and how South Africa and this program. And then so I was able to apply that to my own life when I started thinking about my issues with my father, my mom, my community, and my issues with education. But it was this experience when I was in South Africa. It was like my second year, I think, second year. And we had to teach them an after school program. We had 3 hours a day. And these kids would show up on time, 2:00. It was 2 to 5. And we teach them whatever we want, whatever program. And what was messed up is that I was there for 3 months. And about a month into it, the only thing I could think of, because, you know, academics wasn't my strong suit at the time. I was still a knucklehead coming out of high school trying to figure it out. I was teaching them football, push-ups, sit-ups. And I'm like, one, the kids are starving. Two, they're like dying of AIDS and they, like, don't even have the basic nutrition. And I'm teaching them how to be fit. And so, like, when I was having these, I was doing journal entries and these different academic activities that made me do reflection work. And I was so disappointed in myself thinking about, I had this time with these kids to share, and all I had to do was share was how to do fitness stuff. I didn't have nothing else to offer. I was so ashamed. And it almost made me quit football, to the point where I turned the program around and I asked the kids what would they like to do. And then it became this kind of art place where they came and they started expressing, doing dance and whatnot. And then from that, thinking about how I had this immense position of privilege to engage with these kids. I had access to this tremendous institutional knowledge. I had my ancestors that came before me to give me this opportunity. And all I could teach these kids was how to do jumping jacks. It was like, it rocked me. And it was hard because I was by myself. I didn't have my dad, my mom, the kids in this program I wasn't really close with, faculty. So I was really alone there to really sit with that discomfort. And so in that discomfort, my reaction was, okay, let me see what they would like to do. And I kind of relinquished the process to the kids and how can I help? And it became this after school program where I focused all my resources on helping them practice their dance, practice their poetry, their singing. And it became now a mechanism for them to learn how to express themselves in the trauma in which they were going through. So then by me going through that process, I was like, okay, this is how I can serve. How can I take my athletic prowess? How can I take this privilege and shine a light on that? And so I came back and I was on ESPN and I was talking about these girls and what they were for me, Bill Gates and all these, you know, because I was a top flight athlete, started, you know, acknowledging to raised money, brought them out to the university 2 years in a row and started doing all this work, you know, that was rooted in doing service and really me thinking about how am I taking accountability for these positions of power and privilege that I had. And then my academics, even though I barely graduated high school, it really helped me understand that I wasn't dumb. What it was that I didn't have certain confidence. I wasn't in the right learning experience. And then my attitude needed to shift. Because once my attitude was around, it wasn't about me. How can I improve myself for the other? I was sitting at the front of the row. I was like, it was such an interesting experience to understand that how your perspective and your attitude really dictates your living environment. And so again, you know, thinking about that experience. And then after getting the momentum, I had this kind of really powerful experience where, you know, at the time before he passed away, Desmond Tutu came out. And we acknowledged him and they asked me to give a speech to him. And so in front of like 3,500 people, I gave a speech and he got up, gave me a hug. And it was like the first time I was acknowledged from like this prominent figure from something outside of athletics. And then it really planted this other seed that I may have more to give outside of knocking people out, you know what I mean? And the part was difficult because technically I really didn't even like football. What I appreciated about athletics was how athletics really helped craft the character. What I was really liked about athletics was how the coaches in the athletics really pushed you physically to have to think about things in terms of your character. How do you respond to things? Courage, you know, going out there and physically pushing yourself. I didn't really care about the winning and the championships and the attention you got, but more so the camaraderie and the family. And so that was another thing that was interesting, you know, being in college and getting all that attention and not really wanting it, you know. But when I started seeing how that attention could help influence, I remember when I came back, it was close to my senior year, no, my fourth year in college, when they basically were saying, you know, you're getting ready to go to the NFL. And I had ESPN coming to interview me. And I gave up the ESPN interview so they could interview the girls from South Africa to talk about their story on that platform, you know. And so,
wow, you know what? That's really powerful. Actually, I really love the way you are using your experiences to improve your and expand your awareness. And even though you are faced with whatever it is that you're going through, you're facing it, internal conflicts, whatever it is, those experiences, you're using them all. You may feel the fear, but you're going. I love the fact that you're doing it anyway and that you're learning. I love that you are practicing along the way. Don't you ever give up. That's what we have to do. We have to continue to practice. You taught me practice. You really
Mm-hmm.
did. You taught me practice. And Shannon, he talks about that a lot. I want to ask you, how do you stay motivated?
Every day, it's one of those. It's interesting that motivation, because I think what happens is that um when you start taking accountability for the chaos in your life,
Mhm.
and you start building these tools to help you really understand the deep love for yourself, and you start falling head over heels with yourself, what
Yeah.
happens is your intuition starts rising.
Mhm.
And for me, it's became this process, because I think, I don't know if it's this life or just past lives, I don't know, but I've experienced so much power, I think, in my life. My intuition is constantly reminding me of, like, you know, how to, better serve and just relinquish that control. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's been a process of really, really, really leaning on the notion of my intuition. So, and I think the way it translates to me is faith. Because I grew up like a Southern Baptist, in the church, hallelujah, Sunday church, long 11 o'clock service, you know what I mean? Black folk, tradition, you know what I mean? My best part was the
Funny.
singing, but right when Pastor started talking, you got 2.5 hours, and I'm
I
losing it. I'm
know.
losing it. So I know the culture. We got breakfast after, and
Yes.
tithing. So, but when I kind of started going down this road of really not being scared about asking these tough fundamental questions, why
Mhm.
is it that I called myself a Christian? Why is it that I liked women? Why is it that I said education? Like these questions, and shoot them down to the bone.
Mhm.
That's when those practices became relevant. And what I realized is that it wasn't, because it's all difficult, and a lot of times we want to use distractions, you know what I mean, whether it be drug addiction, or whether it be
Yeah.
shopping or work, or whatever you do.
Yes.
But my goal was to strip myself to my bare bone nakedness. Honestly, I wanted to see what was AK about, without fame, without money, without position, power, privileges, just me, booty ball naked. And I just, my emotions just be like, if you strip me down and I got nothing to offer, no fancy nothing,
Right.
what do I have to offer? And that's the position I've been working on. So now when I walk into a room, when I've looked at myself, I don't care if you're Bill Gates, Buffett, I don't care if you're whoever, every single one of y'all got some internal conflict, that, and me understanding
Yes.
that as a human being. So that really helped
Yes.
me really eliminate the whole status thing. And then another thing about self-care is that when I thought about, when you start, of course, reading into research and stuff like that, and you have this notion of like yourself and how do you view yourself. And so when you talk about loving yourself, and so what if I didn't have to have the affirmation of my mom? Because I just started thinking about, why was it so difficult when my mom was in my life, my dad, or my friends, or community? What was difficult about that? You don't have acknowledgement. You don't have people telling you you're great or you're
Yeah.
magnificent. I said, okay,
Yeah.
so what if, okay, so there's the laws of polarity. If there's no one telling you that, what if I told myself that? What if I knew that I was already dope? What if I already knew that I was magnificent and I didn't have to prove that to nobody?
Yes.
And when we talk about speaking life into yourself, and that everything you say matters. So when you start looking at I start looking at myself, I started telling myself, you're magnificent. I started literally imagining looking at myself and having to tell myself, I apologize. I'm like hugging myself and looking at myself and saying, you're already magnificent. We just got to now. And when I started just speaking that, and started practicing that, and when I felt down, did the meditation and going through and chewing it down the bone, why did I feel that insecurity, and understanding how my ego was informing that from past
Yes.
experiences or
Yes.
things. And then I became my affirmation. I became my
Yes.
source of power. I became, and then anytime I started getting low on that source of power, I had to rejuvenate myself. I had to check what was going on with my food, what was going on with the relationships that I have in my life. Who am I surrounding myself around? What am I saying? Like, so this is becomes a practice of, because my energy, all those things that I'm talking about, breathing, the eating, those are rejuvenation,
Yeah.
regenerative practices. So I didn't have to convince myself to do that. It was like, because every day I realized that, how am I putting myself in a position to be my best self? And then that's when I had to quit the job at the comfort. And that was inconvenience too, because when you start realizing what does it mean to be your best self, you have to understand your traditional families, your money, your all those things that were giving you the acknowledgement. Those might not have been the best resources that were making you your best self. And so I had to be willing to let go of my family name, my religious practices, my sexual preferences, whatever. Well, I didn't care about the embarrassment, the positions of power that I was losing, but I trusted that if the universe says I'm going to love myself, and if I
Yeah.
put that out there, what the universe says is that's going to give it back to me. So what this life has been right now is really not testing it, but leaning on that theory. Faith is not nothing to do with them books. Faith is going and not saying. So everything that I've been doing in my life has been leading me in terms of my spiritual disposition. When I say something like, I want to start my own business so I can build my own institutional framework to help me perpetuate the practices to be my best self. My spirit said nothing. It was like, all right. So I continued with that. When I was like getting wavery and I was like, oh, I'm not making enough money right now. Let me try to get a job so I can hurry up. My spirit was like, easy, sir. Why is it you want to get that job? Because I want the comforts of the money. Do you need
Yes.
that? Right? And during that turmoil,
Man, you are preaching
the
today.
eating, the breathing, that's what helped me simmer me down and acknowledge where the ego is. The ego is constant.
Yes.
And ego is constant, and the struggle is constant.
Yes.
Cornel West does a good job talking about why he's a blues man, and that's why I like him so much, because
Mhm.
he talks about the inherent practice of blues musicians having to constantly convey how they're negotiating the funk of their own life.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
Yes.
that's what came with the flagship one of my own workshops called Negotiating Through the Funk, because that is the main premise, human experience that we all go through. My goal is to help us negotiate through our own institutional funk, personal funk,
Yeah.
physical funk, and then we expose exactly what's contributing to that and align the tools that help you get out of that, and then you come with solutions that help you solve your own problems.
You are so amazing. You are bringing it today. Let me just tell, yes, you are. You are bringing it. You are speaking my language. And I am so proud of you. Honestly, you're going to have to come back. We're running out of time. I mean,
Of
you
course,
have
I
to,
mean, yeah, I ain't
you,
look, ADD, I ain't got nothing done yet, so we're gonna have more time.
you got everything. Everything
Hey,
is going for
look,
you.
ADD, we're always gonna give you second chances.
But I love what you're saying because it's so true. It is happening in my life. I know what you're saying is valid because I am doing those things and my life has changed. And trust me, there is a spiritual world that we do not see. And I love the fact that you are magnificent just because you are. You don't have
Thank
to
you.
do another thing, but because you came from divine intelligence that created only AK, you
Mm.
are so magnificent. And that's what we have to continue to tell ourselves. Man, the ego is on its job. That's
Yeah,
why these
yeah, and
practices are
that
so
power.
important. Mhm.
Yeah, the job, and the thing is, it's like when they talk about you can't go against the current of the river. You know what I mean? You got to go with the flow. So like a lot of times people will talk to me about when I'm teaching them meditation, because I have the hour class I did with you, and you said it. You were like, my mind is going, and I was like, no worries, just go
Yes,
back
you
to the
did. You
breathing.
said no worries. And you know what? It is no worries because as I meditate now, my meditation teacher, they're just like, I just observe the thoughts. And honestly, I have a primordial mantra that was given to me that's only for me. And I use that mantra during my meditation. I follow Shaman Durek. He is a sixth generation shaman, and I
Mm-hmm.
do his meditations. They are effective. When I tell you effective, because fear is an energy. It is a
Mm-hmm.
spirit. So when fear shows up, all you have to do is invite fear to sit down and just fit. So what are you doing here? Why are you
Yeah.
here? Because
You
I'm
make
not
fear uncomfortable.
afraid.
You can make fear feel just as uncomfortable as happiness. You
Yes,
want to feel like,
yes,
oh,
you
you
bring it to
trying
the
to scare
light.
me? So what you trying to scare me about?
Yes,
And then you breathe
exactly.
and you sit there and you observe. And but like the thing is, what's good is that your ego will take you to exactly
Mm-hmm,
wherever the source is if you're
mm-hmm.
able to get that practice. Because now when I have, and what's happening to me, it just happens faster. That's all that happens now. So when I'm
Me too.
sitting
Yeah.
and now what's happening, and a lot of times people have with fear is that a lot of times people don't want to let their minds go to where that place is, where they need to
Mm-hmm,
go, because they haven't practiced on understanding the breathing process, the observation. But the very key is that one thing that's allowed me to be so bold and facing everything is
mm-hmm.
that this is a universal law. Everything is temporary. If you're feeling that pain, you put your mind to that pain, which you know is that pain is temporary. I'm sitting there in this discomfort in my shoulder while I'm meditating. I put my mind, and I'm observing what's going on in my shoulder. Eventually that goes away. Then I go to the next place of my body. All it does is help us understand that the sensations are energetic. And when those energetic energies are then temporary. And what happens, the elevation gets to the point where you act, because now I'm able to vibrate my body from my head all the way to my down in a breathing cycle. And so
Yes.
then you start building literally your own type of superpower in the practice, but it's unique to you. But do you have the courage to sit in that? And that's where, when I talk about those three kind of pillars of individual action, community support, institutional framework, those three things really help and reinforce people practicing these tools that they expose for themselves. It's hard really doing it on your own. It's very isolating sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? We are running out of time.
Right.
You are welcome back to the Fear to Freedom Project anytime. You know what I wanted to ask you? This is something, this is probably so off topic,
It's
but
okay.
it is kind of in there. When we were at the ocean,
Mm.
before you got into the ocean, of course, Kim and Shannon just flew right on down into the water. They went to jump in the water. But before you got into the ocean, you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to play your drums and you
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to, yes, you
Yeah.
were just like, I'm not going in there. I have to, pay homage. Like, why did you do that? Because
Yeah.
this is what I'm learning now. And you know what I did? I stayed back there with you. I'm like, I'm not going. I'm staying with.
So like this is like, now this is getting to my, like, fantasy avatar type stuff. So like I believe I'm a part of these elements. And so a big part of my connection with the ocean is that because my mind moves so much, the ocean is this ego check for me. And I look at the ocean as a living thing. And
Mhm.
so before I go into the ocean, I need to pay my respect to something so magnificent, and I always want to make sure that my spiritual self is ready to receive, because the ocean and the water is so ancient. And so every time I go into it, I always want to open my spiritual self up to receive whatever knowledge I need,
Yeah.
so I can be prepared. So the jumping into, because it's so magnificently powerful, I never want the ocean to mistake that I'm taking advantage of her.
Yes.
It's like my
Yes.
relationship
Yes.
with
I
Kimberly.
feel
It's like
you.
my relationship with Kimberly as women. Like my
Yeah.
relationship with women, it's very important that they know that they always have a safe space with me, and they know that it's okay to do whatever. You know what I mean? And my goal is to ground that space, just like with the ocean. And so before I go out, I always have to say thankful and practice gratitude, just to make sure that on my end, I did my part. So if you flying me off that ocean, it's not because I wasn't thankful. It was because you had something else going on. You
I
had nothing to do with
know,
me. It's fine.
right?
But I did my part. That's
I
all I try.
love that.
Yeah, and that's really a big thing, that learning after coming from this position of feeling I got to influence people
Mhm.
versus learning how to love me. By learning how to love me at my best capacity, that becomes the cup of overflowing that pours over to others. So instead of seeking to try to influence people, what I try to do is just be present for who's there in my life. And at that time when we met you, it was a perfect example, because I wasn't trying to convince anybody in my world, but you came across my world, and I was able to be 100% for that opportunity. And you
It
all
was
reached
impactful.
out. It was just, and we just went through.
Yes.
And that's what I feel like my impact has become more important, is that being present for those opportunities there versus trying to convince the masses. Because what's hard with the masses is that when I used to do like outreach work is after you see somebody for an hour or 2 hours and you leave them, it's hard when they're by themselves. Like when you're working with youth, like you can convince a youth to be good for 2.5 hours, but then they got to go back home. They got to go back amongst their peers.
Yes.
Right. And so that was the difficult part. So I was like, instead of me trying to figure out how to influence people outside of my presence, let me just stay present. And so that's been kind of a tool I'm working on now. But thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is one question. This is one question I ask everybody before they leave. What are you most excited about in life right now?
Oh, what I'm most excited about? Man, just I guess connection. That's been something that I've been it's been a process of me going internal for a long time now. And I think what's happening now is I'm ready to kind of start opening up and start connecting. And I think me finding where my tribe is at.
Oh, yes. I feel you.
Yeah, finding where my tribe
I'm in your tribe.
Yeah, because I always feel like I'm a gypsy and I'm good. I've been comfortable. Now I'm like kind of like settled. I have a place where I can call home because I've been out in the world so much. And it's been good because being out in the world helps you understand the humanity and the struggle of the human experience that we're all struggling with.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then also how we've manifested these experiences through religion, through economics, through culture, and all these different things. So it's been good. But also too. Yeah. So,
honestly, I mean, I'm gonna bring some more. We're gonna be doing some more spiritual talking because the elements are alive. Trees talk to us. They have the greatest wisdom. I had that experience where the tree kind of called me to it, and I even had to ask the shaman, like, what is going on here? But yes, spirituality is very sacred. And this human experience is sacred now that I know, the secret to it. And so, I appreciate you. So you guys have heard it. Thank you so much. I love you, brother. Thank you for coming.
Love you too, girl. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you heard it right here at the Fear to Freedom Project. We got Anthony Kelley, who is empowering holistic growth through education, wellness, and transformative coaching. Listen, if you are a first timer, welcome to the Fear to Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Deb, and I am running this thing the best way that I can, the best way that I know how. I'm bringing you real people with real solutions that are going to help you through this human experience. If you are a returning champion, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, and share this great experience. Thank you for coming and have an amazing day.